Greetings, dear subscribers and casual listeners of my channel. Today, we'll explore some of the most controversial deviations in the Harry Potter films from the original books. With the release of the third installment, the novels grew significantly in volume, making it impossible to faithfully adapt every storyline. As a result, certain scenes were altered, trimmed, or entirely removed. Let's examine the most unfortunate ones. Number 1. The Quidditch World Cup. The event we never got to see. One of the most spectacular and anticipated episodes, the final of the Quidditch World Cup, is simply missing from the film The Goblet of Fire. The events leading up to the match were shortened, the game itself was completely omitted, and the screen time jumped straight to its aftermath. This disappointed many viewers, especially those who had imagined the match as a grand magical spectacle in the books, far more intense than any school tournament. It seems the scene was deemed too complex or expensive to produce, but its absence weakened the overall narrative. Number 2. The Burrow attack, a meaningless addition. The film The Half-Blood Prince introduced a completely new scene not present in the book, a Death Eater attack on the Weasley home. In the book, this event never occurred. Instead, Harry had an important meeting with the Minister of Magic, Rufus Scrimgeour, where potential cooperation was discussed. The on-screen destruction of the Burrow lacked any follow-up and raised many questions. Why were there so few attackers? Why was the attack a one-time event? And why didn't Voldemort participate? The scene merely filled screen time without adding any real value to the story. Number 3. Wormtail's fate left off-screen. Peter Pettigrew, a key figure in the betrayal of Harry's parents, received his comeuppance in the final books. A magical bond existed between him and Harry. Once, Harry had spared his life, creating a life debt. In the book, this debt played a crucial role. Wormtail couldn't kill Harry, and the magical hand Voldemort had given him strangled its master for hesitating. This moment was the climax of the character's inner conflict and a symbol of justice. In the film, however, Pettigrew was simply stunned and never appeared again. This important plotline, crucial to the themes of betrayal and redemption, was completely lost. Number 4. Harry and Cho's breakup, poorly explained. Harry's romance with Cho Chang developed gradually in the book and ended naturally. Personality clashes, mutual frustration with each other's friends, and Cho's friends' betrayal all contributed to the breakup. The film, however, presented a simplified and distorted version in which Cho herself supposedly betrayed Dumbledore's army. Even though there's a brief mention of Veritaserum, the character's motivations remain unconvincing, and Harry appears unreasonably harsh. This oversimplification erased the complex emotional nuances of teenage relationships that the book handled so well. Number 5. Barty Crouch Jr.'s backstory was cut to the bone. The central mystery of the Goblet of Fire revolved around the mysterious figure who rigged the Triwizard Tournament. The answer was Barty Crouch Jr., who impersonated Mad-Eye Moody. The book explains in detail how he escaped from Azkaban and how the Ministry was fooled. These details gave the story a dark, sinister depth. The film, by contrast, reduced this arc to a simple reveal of the disguise, never explaining how it all happened. As a result, an important antagonist remained in the shadows, and the tension carefully built in the book was lost. Number 6. The Marauders' backstory was almost completely ignored. The Marauders were never just names on a map. They were 4 boys who grew up together, broke rules together, and made magic of their own. James Potter, Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew, Prongs, Padfoot, Moony, and Wormtail. In Prisoner of Azkaban, their story is a heartbeat beneath the plot. They created the Marauders' map. They became animagi to protect Remus during his transformations. They were brothers until one betrayed them all. "He was their friend," Sirius shouts in the book, voice shaking. "And he betrayed them. He was the spy." The films skip this entirely. There is no explanation of how the 4 friends became legends at Hogwarts. No scenes of young James and Sirius transforming into animals to run with a werewolf under the moon. no real weight given to why Lupin freezes when he sees Peter. Why Sirius and Remus look at each other with memories too painful to speak aloud. To the film audience, it's a simple twist. The rat is a man, but to readers, it's the destruction of a bond forged in fire. Without this backstory, Harry's connection to Sirius loses depth. So does his understanding of his father. He doesn't learn that James was flawed, or that love among friends can break and heal. The Marauders weren't just a subplot, they were the past repeating itself. Bravery, loyalty, betrayal. The story of 4 boys who dreamed of being heroes, and only one became a traitor. Number 7, Winky and the House Elf storyline were entirely cut. Winky was never shown, not once. Yet, in Goblet of Fire, she's the house elf who knew the darkest secret of the Crouch family, that Barty Crouch Jr. was alive, hidden, and under the Imperious curse. Winky served Mr. Crouch with fierce loyalty, even when he cast her out. "He is my master," she sobbed, "and I must do as he says." Her heartbreak and devotion were more than emotional colour. They were clues. Without Winky, the truth behind the Triwizard sabotage unravels far less clearly. The film removes her completely. No Winky at the World Cup, no trembling elf at Hogwarts, no one to show the deep, painful bond between enslaved creatures and their masters. That missing thread also deletes Hermione's entire campaign, SPEW, the Society for the Promotion of Elfish Welfare. The film shows Dobby once or twice, that's all. No exploration of house elf freedom or the hidden cruelty inside the magical world. In the book, Winky's story matters. It shows how oppression exists even in a world of wonder. It shows how love and fear can bind someone long after they're cast aside. Without her, Barty Crouch Jr. feels like a twist, not a tragedy. The audience misses the weight, the pain, the warning. Winky didn't just clean rooms. She carried the secret that cracked the entire tournament wide open, and the films never let her speak. Number 8. The final conversation between Harry and Voldemort was missing from the film. In the book, Voldemort dies in the Great Hall, in front of everyone, the survivors, the wounded, the dead. Harry stands between the house tables and tells him exactly why he's lost. "You're the one who's weak," Harry says, "and you'll never know love or friendship, and I feel sorry for you." It's not just a duel, it's a dismantling. Harry explains the Elder Wand's true loyalty, reveals Snape's sacrifice, and gives Tom Riddle one last chance to feel something human. He refuses. The film throws all that away. Instead of truth and tension, we get a chase, a dive off a tower, a fistfight in smoke. Voldemort's final moment is a silent disintegration in an empty courtyard, witnessed by no one. There's no audience, no closure. The man who terrorized an entire world vanishes like dust. And Harry, the boy who lived, says nothing. No last words, no mercy, no justice, just silence. That final dialogue was more than words. It was Harry's triumph, not through power, but through understanding. He wins because he knows about wand law, about love, about death. He offers Voldemort a chance to save himself. In the book, Tom Riddle dies a man, a broken, arrogant man whose own wand turns against him. In the film, he dies, a special effect, and that changes everything. Number 9, Snape's memories of Lily Potter were insufficiently explored. Snape's memories were the soul of Deathly Hallows. When Harry poured them into the pensieve, he didn't just see a man who hated him. He saw a broken boy who loved his mother. A boy who called her a mudblood and never forgave himself. A man who stood beside Dumbledore, not for the cause, but for Lily Evans. "You have been raising him like a pig for slaughter," Snape said with shaking voice. "You've kept him alive so that he can die at the proper moment." That's the moment we learn the truth. He was never Harry's enemy. He was his silent protector. But the film rushed it all. We got flashes, images, a dying Snape, Lily on a swing. A single always. Powerful, yes, but incomplete. The film never showed Snape begging Dumbledore to keep Lily safe, saying, "Hide them all then, keep her." them safe. It never let us sit with his guilt, with his loneliness, with the years of silent grief. We didn't see the full weight of that silver doe, the Patronus he conjured every night for the girl he lost. In the books, those memories reframe everything, every glare, every insult, every potion class. Snape becomes tragic, not cruel, loyal, not cold. In the films, that transformation is there, but only just. Viewers who never read the books don't see the full depth. They see a flicker of pain, not the burning grief that drove every choice he made. Number 10, the complete disappearance of Charlie Weasley. Charlie Weasley never set foot in the films, not even once. Not at the Quidditch World Cup, where he welcomed the group to the campgrounds. Not during the Triwizard Tournament, where he helped bring in the dragons. And not at the wedding of his own brother, Bill. A moment that was meant to show the entire Weasley family standing together, united in love before the war truly began. In the books, he was there. In the movies, he was erased. But Charlie was more than just another Weasley. He was the Dragon Wrangler, the wild one, the brother who chose adventure over ambition, who worked in Romania and came home only when it mattered. In Goblet of Fire, Hagrid says, "Charlie's taken a couple days off from the Dragon Reserve in Romania to help transport them." That line alone reminds us Charlie was part of the magical world beyond Hogwarts, and he was brave, reliable, a warrior. During the Battle of Hogwarts, Charlie returns to fight. He doesn't get as much page time as Fred or George, but he's there. His presence gives the Weasleys depth, not just a funny family, but a big one, a real one. One with stories spread across the world. His absence in the films flattens them. We're left thinking there are only 6 siblings, not 7. It changes the shape of the family, and maybe that's the real loss. The Weasleys are the heart of the series. They take Harry in. They love him like their own. Each member has a role to play, even Percy, even Ron's rat. But Charlie, the dragon tamer with burns on his arms and a quiet smile, he's only ever a name, if that. The films gave us no glimpse of him. And in doing so, they clipped the wings of the wildest Weasley. Number 11. Strange changes to Ginny Weasley's character. Ginny Weasley in the books is fire. She grows from a shy little sister to a confident young woman who jokes with Fred and George, leads the Gryffindor Quidditch team, and faces Death Eaters without flinching. She hexes Draco Malfoy in a corridor, teases Ron without mercy, and doesn't hesitate to tell Harry when he's being an idiot. "You don't have to keep saving the world, Harry," she says sharply in Order of the Phoenix. She is bold, funny, and full of life. That's the Ginny who captures Harry's heart. Not suddenly, but over time. And when they kiss in the book, it feels earned, it feels real. But in the films, Ginny becomes almost invisible. She barely speaks, her fire is gone. She doesn't joke, doesn't fight, doesn't stand out. Her strongest moments are erased or given to others. Her relationship with Harry is reduced to glances, awkward silences, and the now infamous shoe-tying scene in Half-Blood Prince. Instead of a fiery connection, we get a flat, whispery romance with no build-up. There's no Quidditch victory kiss, no jealous tension, just a quiet girl who appears in the background and somehow ends up with the hero. The change is so jarring that film-only audiences often ask, why did Harry even end up with her? In the book Half-Blood Prince, when Harry finally kisses Ginny, it's explosive. A victory, a release, a moment that had been building for pages. He had never truly felt this way before, the narration tells us. But the film skips the tension, the chemistry, the conversations. It gives us a kiss in the room of requirement with no emotion, no heat, and no context. The worst part is that Bonnie Wright, the actress who played Ginny, could have done it. She had the range, the presence, but the script gave her almost nothing to work with. The result is one of the biggest disservices to a strong female character in the series. Book Ginny was a hero in her own right. Film Ginny was reduced to a side note. And Harry Potter deserved both. The battles and the girl who could fight them with him. Number 12. Complete disregard for Dumbledore's burned glove. After Dumbledore's death in Half-Blood Prince, Harry finds himself alone in the headmaster's office, staring at the sword of Gryffindor, but next to the sword lies something else. Something small, quiet, and devastating. A blackened, burned glove. The glove Dumbledore wore when he put on Marvolo Gaunt's cursed ring, a Horcrux. It had scorched his flesh, left his hand withered and dead-looking, and marked the beginning of his countdown. This moment in the book is unspoken, but heavy. Harry doesn't need an explanation. The glove says everything. Dumbledore's right hand was blackened and shriveled. It looked as though his flesh had been burned away. Half-Blood Prince, Chapter 4. That line stays with the reader. It tells us Dumbledore was not invincible, that he made a mistake, a very human mistake, or and paid for it with his life. The glove is a symbol of that mistake, of that sacrifice. He wore it to hide the wound, but in death he left it behind, a silent message for Harry to find. The film ignores this entirely. There's no mention of the glove, no hint of the cursed ring's consequences beyond vague dialogue. The viewer never sees what Dumbledore paid to destroy the Horcrux. He simply dies, clean and polished. But that's not the truth the book told. The truth was messy, heroic, tragic. The truth was a glove burned through by dark magic and held on to the very end. Leaving out the glove wasn't just a missed prop. It was a missed opportunity to show Dumbledore's humanity. To show that courage is not only in great speeches or one duel, but in choosing to act, even when you know the price. That charred glove, lying quietly beside the sword, said more than a dozen lines ever could. Number 13, Forgotten Dursley, Dudley, and the farewell scene. It was a scene that could have redefined an entire relationship, a moment of fragile truth between two boys who had spent a lifetime on opposite sides of a locked cupboard door. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, nestled quietly between the grand preparations for war and the crumbling of Voldemort's shadow across England, there is a chapter that the films chose to forget. In those few, easily missed pages, Dudley Dursley, the boy who once delighted in bullying Harry, extends a hand, both literally and metaphorically, a moment of transformation, a rare glimpse of healing. And then it vanishes from the screen without a trace. For 7 books, Dudley Dursley represented everything Harry Potter was not: spoiled, coddled, brutish, and oblivious. While Harry faced dragons and dementors, Dudley faced the terror of not getting 39 birthday presents instead of 38. He was the child who learned early how to weaponize his parents' love and how to define himself through Harry's exclusion. In The Sorcerer's Stone, readers were introduced to Dudley's world through small but telling moments: his tantrums, his smirks, the way he kicked Harry's shins under the table while Petunia passed him sausages. Yet time, even in a story filled with magic and myth, has a way of changing people. Dudley was no longer the lumbering tyrant of Privet Drive by the time the Dursleys prepared to flee their home. His encounters with fear had left their mark, most notably the Dementor attack in Order of the Phoenix. That scene, grim and vivid, peeled back Dudley's self-image. For the first time, he felt helpless, exposed. The boy who had once mocked Harry's nightmares finally met a monster of his own. What happened after the Dementor incident was never fully explored in the narrative, but the aftershocks were there. Dudley asked a question that seemed so out of character. It was as though he had spoken a foreign language. "Why isn't he coming with us?" he asked, when Harry didn't join them after the attack. And Vernon, his father, seemed almost stunned. For Dudley to acknowledge Harry, especially with concern, was unthinkable in their household dynamic. By Deathly Hallows, J.K. Rowling allowed us to witness the quiet evolution of a boy coming to terms with his past. It was subtle, but it was real. When the time came for the Dursleys to go into hiding to escape Voldemort's wrath, there was a final goodbye. Not a dramatic farewell with tears and revelations, but something better, something true. Dudley didn't apologize with words, not really. He wasn't that kind of boy. But he showed up. He paused. He waited for Harry. And then he shook his cousin's hand. "You saved my life," Dudley said. And for once, the words weren't hollow. He had remembered the Dementors. He remembered being saved. And more importantly, he understood. There was no snark, no backhanded insult, just those words. And then, even more astonishing, he added, "I don't think you're a waste of space." Those words, more than any act of magic, held weight. Harry had lived his childhood being called freak and nothing. He had been erased from family photos, denied a bedroom, told he was unwanted. And now, after years of silence and neglect, Dudley, the golden boy of number 4, looked at him not as an outcast, but as a person. It was a turning point, as meaningful as any battle with Death Eaters. This was not a spell or a potion, it was a human moment, born of reflection and experience. Dudley, who had once measured self-worth in birthday gifts and boxing trophies, now measured it in gratitude, in recognition, in acknowledging the boy who had lived not just in a cupboard, but in his shadow. This scene, recorded in Chapter 3 of Deathly Hallows, remains one of the series' most poignant, yet it never made it to the screen. In the film adaptation, the Dursleys leave without a word. The moment is sliced from the story, replaced by silence and a car door slamming. For many viewers, it meant the final image of Dudley remained frozen, a scowling, spoiled boy who never changed. But for readers, the truth was different. Rowling had given him a farewell. Director David Yates filmed the scene. It exists, an alternate version, where Harry and Dudley share their awkward but meaningful handshake. The actor who played Dudley, Harry Melling, even spoke about how much he loved filming it. But in the editing room, someone decided it didn't fit the tone. It slowed the pace. And so it was gone, but what was lost in that choice was more than a moment. It was the arc of forgiveness. Not just for Harry, who had been abused and marginalized, but for Dudley, who had to unlearn everything he'd been taught. The Dursleys were never villains in the Voldemort sense. They were products of fear, of smallness, of a world that could not contain magic. But that made their evolution all the more vital. Petunia had a scene too, once written, in which she almost told Harry that she had always known he was special, that she had once loved her sister, Lily. That scene was also cut. Another loss, but of the two, Dudley's was perhaps more needed, because Dudley represented the ordinary person in the magical world, the one who had no wand, no prophecy, no dark mark, just choice. And he chose to see Harry at last as more than the boy in the cupboard. There was a line in Half-Blood Prince that quietly foreshadowed this shift. When Dumbledore visits Privet Drive and speaks to the Dursleys, he says, "You did not do as I asked. You have never treated Harry as a son. He has known nothing but neglect and cruelty." And the Dursleys, for once, have no reply. The silence hangs. Guilt flickers. The first crack in their armor. It would take another book for Dudley to respond to that guilt. But when he does, it feels earned. Not dramatic, not overly sentimental, but real. In those few seconds of their goodbye, readers were allowed to imagine a future where Harry and Dudley might not be close, but might understand each other, might write at Christmas, might nod across a room. Number 14. Dumbledore's funeral was neglected. Of all the losses in the Harry Potter saga, none was felt so universally as the death of Albus Dumbledore. In the 6th book, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, Dumbledore's funeral served as a powerful epilogue to the life of one of the most revered figures in wizarding history. Rowling etched the scene with such gravity that it became not only a moment of grief, but of rare collective unity across the magical world. On the shore of the Black Lake, with mermaids singing mournfully and centaurs firing arrows into the sky, the magical community stood together to honor a man who had spent his life holding back the rising darkness. Yet in the film adaptation, this extraordinary moment was erased. It was replaced with a brief, almost sterile shot of students and staff raising their wands in silence. The emotional and political implications of Dumbledore's death and the public recognition of it were stripped away. A cinematic opportunity to solidify Dumbledore's legacy as more than just a school headmaster was lost. Rowling wrote Dumbledore's funeral with exquisite detail, as if it were an ancient rite remembered by all magical beings. They had built a white tomb beside the lake, the book said. Somewhere out in the grounds the merpeople were singing. That line alone carried the weight of myth. The fact that merpeople, typically reclusive and apathetic to human affairs, were so moved as to compose a lament suggests that Dumbledore's death echoed far beyond the walls of Hogwarts. His loss shattered the illusion that magic could protect its own indefinitely. This wasn't simply the end of a man, it was the beginning of a terrifying new chapter. The film, however, chose to mark that with a minimalist gesture that, while visually poetic, lacked depth. It was cinematic brevity at the cost of narrative soul. The omission is especially jarring when we consider what the funeral scene symbolized in the broader arc of the series. Until that point, the wizarding world had been fragmenting between those who feared Voldemort's return and those who denied it, between pure blood supremacists and those defending Muggleborns, between political loyalty and moral conviction. Dumbledore's death was a rupture that forced everyone to look inward, and his funeral was the last time the magical world stood united before war would divide it entirely. From Cornelius Fudge, the disgraced minister, to Hagrid, the half-giant gamekeeper, sobbing uncontrollably, everyone gathered in a rare moment of shared vulnerability. Even the centaurs came, creatures proud and aloof who seldom recognized human leadership. Their presence was a salute to Dumbledore's unmatched respect for all magical life. In excising that moment, the film lost the chance to show what Dumbledore truly meant beyond Hogwarts. The decision to exclude the funeral also deprived viewers of seeing how other characters processed grief. In the book, Luna Lovegood, known for her ethereal detachment, was described holding her father's hand and looking more grounded than ever. Kingsley Shacklebolt stood silently in the background, not as an aura, but as a man mourning a mentor. These subtleties enriched the emotional fabric of the story. They reminded readers that the war against Voldemort wasn't just fought with spells and secrets, it was sustained by love, grief, memory, and pain. The film, however, swept all of this under the rug in favor of a single shot, as though the audience didn't need to feel the collective ache of this moment. There's a strange cruelty in showing Dumbledore's body falling from the astronomy tower, shattered in death, without offering the audience the catharsis of a farewell. The visual of his fall was harrowing and effective, yes. But where is the healing after the hurt? A story that delivers a brutal blow should also offer a moment to breathe. The book did that masterfully. The lake, the tomb, the song. It was a balm on the burn. The film, in contrast, raced forward, eager to prepare for the final act. Perhaps that was a narrative choice born of pacing, but in doing so it failed to understand that the funeral wasn't just a goodbye, it was a narrative milestone. One cannot discuss Dumbledore's death without understanding his role as the moral compass of the series. He was more than a teacher or even a leader. He was in many ways the heart of the resistance, the first one to stand against Grindelwald, the first to openly challenge Voldemort's ideology, the one who protected Hogwarts not just as a school, but as a sanctuary for the misunderstood. That a figure so central to the cause could die and be mourned by the very beings he defended was a profound message. It said that love, even when triumphant, comes at great cost. The film's failure to showcase the magnitude of Dumbledore's loss undermines his legacy, reducing it to an off-screen burial and a fleeting gesture of candlelit respect. Moreover, the visual potential of the funeral was immense. Imagine the cinematography, the lake shimmering under a pale sky, veils of mist rolling over the water as mermaids rise in song, centaurs silhouetted against the forbidden forest, lowering their heads, teachers in formal robes holding each other's arms united by grief, Fawkes, the phoenix, flying overhead in a final mournful cry before vanishing into the mountains. These are images that linger. These are moments that could have burned themselves into memory, like the first reveal of Hogwarts Castle or the flying car crashing into the Whomping Willow. It was not just a mist scene, it was a mist cinematic masterpiece. Fawkes, in particular, played a vital role in both the book and Dumbledore's life. After his master's death, he was heard singing a phoenix's cry known for healing sorrow, a lament, as Rowling wrote, that made the hair on the back of Harry's neck stand up, made his heart ache with longing. That single moment encapsulated the tragedy better than any wand-lighting tribute. It was a sound that said goodbye in a way words could not. The film could have used music to reflect this, a haunting violin piece, a choral echo of Fawkes's cry, but it remained silent. No lament, just shadows and stillness. Number 15, no explanation for Sirius's mirror. In the dark hours of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Part 1, a shard of glass flickers with the reflection of piercing blue eyes. Harry sees them wide and calm. He doesn't know how or why, but he is certain the eyes are watching him. Moments later, help arrives. Dobby the house elf apparates into Malfoy manner to rescue Harry and his friends from the brink of torture and death. There's no explanation, no hint in the film about how Dobby knew where to go or who sent him. All the audience sees is that mysterious blue gaze in a jagged mirror fragment. It's as if magic simply happened because the plot required it. For filmgoers unfamiliar with the books, this moment becomes a riddle with no answer. But in J.K. Rowling's original story, that mirror carries a weight of loss, memory, and connection. Its sudden appearance in the film, devoid of origin, is not just a narrative shortcut. It's the disappearance of a vital emotional thread. The story of the two-way mirror begins not in Deathly Hallows but in Order of the Phoenix. After the dramatic events at the Department of Mysteries, Harry is left broken by the death of Sirius Black. Yet before that fatal night, Sirius had given Harry a gift, one Harry never opens until it's too late. Tucked inside a package at the bottom of his Hogwarts trunk is a small mirror. "This is a two-way mirror," Sirius had written. "I've got the other one. If you need to talk to me, just speak into it." It was meant to be a secret line between Godfather and Godson, a way to stay connected through walls, distance, and danger. But Harry, fearing that Sirius might get caught again for helping him, never uses it. After Sirius falls through the veil in the Department of Mysteries, the mirror remains, broken and forgotten, just another reminder of Harry's guilt. That forgotten mirror returns in Deathly Hallows, but only in the books. Rowling reintroduces it not as a full item, but as a splintered piece. Harry finds the shard among the belongings packed up from Grindelwald Place, the old Black family home. He rummaged in the rucksack, the book recounts, and pulled out the shard of mirror he had taken from Sirius's room. This detail is crucial. It tells the reader not only where the mirror came from, but links it directly to Sirius, his legacy, his presence, his unspoken offer of help. It is this mirror shard that Harry later uses, gazing into it in moments of desperation, hoping to find guidance. When he sees the blue eyes staring back, he assumes for a fleeting moment that they belong to Albus Dumbledore. But the truth is far more grounded and deeply human. The eyes in the mirror do not belong to a ghost or spirit, but to Aberforth Dumbledore, the estranged brother of Albus. Aberforth, gruff and unshaven, had acquired the other mirror from Mundungus Fletcher, who looted Grindelwald Place after Sirius's death. He had been watching over Harry silently, waiting for a time when help would be needed. "Thought it was you," Aberforth later tells Harry in the book. "I've been watching over you through the mirror." This line alone reshapes the entire mystery. It makes sense of the eyes, it makes sense of the rescue, and most importantly, it brings full circle a gift from Sirius, who, in his own way, ensured that Harry would never truly be alone. The film, however, robs us of this thread. It gives the viewer the mirror shard without ever showing the original mirror, without the gift from Sirius, and without even naming Aberforth until his sudden appearance at the entrance to Hogsmeade. The connection is broken. What's left is a scene that appears arbitrary. Why does Harry look into a mirror shard? Why are there eyes watching? Who do they belong to? When Dobby appears to save them, it seems like divine intervention, not the result of any logical path or plan. The payoff, the emotional and narrative resonance, is simply gone. What makes this omission especially frustrating is how the mirror functions as a metaphor in the book. Sirius's mirror is not just an object of communication, it's a symbol of trust denied and regret lived. Harry's decision not to use the mirror in Order of the Phoenix haunts him. After Sirius dies, he tries to use the mirror to contact him, desperate for one last word. "Sirius?" he whispers into the glass, but there is no reply. The mirror remains dark, and Harry is left crushed by the realization that he waited too long. That kind of grief, the self-inflicted kind, is not easily healed. So when the shard reappears in Deathly Hallows, it's not just a plot device. It's the past, broken but still alive, reaching back to offer him a second chance. There is something poetically appropriate about that, a broken mirror, a broken bond, and yet, through that same broken piece, salvation arrives. Aberforth uses the mirror to act where others cannot. He sends Dobby, who loses his life in the process. "Such a beautiful place to be with friends," Dobby says as he dies in Harry's arms. That line becomes all the more tragic when the reader knows that the house elf was sent not by random magic, but by a man watching from afar, a man Harry didn't even know was on his side. What the film loses, too, is the sense of lineage. In the books, objects matter because of who gives them. The Marauders map is powerful, yes, but it's meaningful because it once belonged to Harry's father and his friends. The firebolt isn't just a broom, it's a gift from Sirius, a symbol of flight and freedom. Likewise, the two-way mirror is not merely enchanted glass, it is Sirius's last gift. When that connection is erased in the film, the shard becomes inert, a narrative corpse. Number 16. The development of Lupin and Tonks' relationship was skipped. Of all the relationships lost in the film adaptations of Harry Potter, the quiet tragedy of Remus Lupin and Nymphadora Tonks might be the most heartbreaking. In the books, theirs is a love forged in shadow, a story that breathes with fear, longing, guilt, and hope. In the films, it is almost a rumor. What was once a fragile, beautifully crafted connection is reduced to a passing line and a shared glance. The absence is glaring, not just because it removes emotional weight from their deaths, but because it robs the audience of a symbol of resistance, humanity, and love during war. J.K. Rowling took care to construct their bond slowly and deliberately. In Half-Blood Prince, Tonks arrives at Hogwarts clearly changed. Her vibrant hair, once a sign of her lively spirit, is dull and mousy brown. It is Minerva McGonagall who gently offers an explanation, hinting at deeper sorrow. She's very down, something to do with her family, I think. But we soon learn the truth. Tonks is devastated because Lupin, believing himself unworthy, pushes her away. She's in love with him, Bill Weasley tells Harry, and he's refusing to get involved because he's too old and he's poor and he's a werewolf. This conflict is essential. Lupin's reluctance is not coldness, it's deep-rooted self-loathing. He sees himself as a danger, a liability. He's already lost so much, his friends, his dignity, his sense of purpose. To accept Tonks's love would mean believing he deserves happiness. That's a battle he struggles to win. In The Half-Blood Prince, the heartbreak plays out in the background, quiet but persistent. Tonks is no longer the clumsy, cheerful aura Harry once knew. She's distant, withdrawn. Her Patronus changes shape, a clear sign in the magical world that her heart has shifted. It now mirrors a wolf. The Patronus shift is subtle but powerful. It signifies the depth of her love and the pain of rejection. Rowling uses magic to convey emotion in a way that the films completely discard. In the books, Tonks's transformation is not just physical, but spiritual. Her unshakable love for Lupin redefines her very essence. She's not a woman distracted by war, she's a woman heartbroken in the midst of it. In the films, this shift never happens. We are never shown the brown hair, we are never told about the Patronus, we are never told why she's sad. By the time we reach the Deathly Hallows, Lupin finally caves to his feelings. He marries Tonks and they have a child, Teddy. But it is not a simple transition. Lupin does not become suddenly happy. In fact, his fear and shame persist. When he tells Harry he's going to leave Tonks and their unborn son, it is one of the most painful moments in the book. Harry, in a rare burst of anger, calls Lupin a coward. "Then you don't deserve to be a father," Harry shouts. It is this confrontation that shakes Lupin to his core. Lupin is not a flawless hero. That's what makes him so real. His struggle to accept love, to believe he can be a good father despite his condition, is a painfully human one. Rowling allows us to see every layer of that. When Lupin later returns to fight in the Battle of Hogwarts, he is a man transformed, not because he's suddenly fearless, but because he chooses love over fear. His final moments are off-page, but they linger. His last gift is Teddy, a symbol that even in ruin, something beautiful can emerge. The films, tragically, choose none of this. They erase the journey. When Tonks first refers to Lupin as sweetheart in Deathly Hallows Part 1, the audience is left confused. There has been no indication of a romance, no Patronus, no rejection, no heartbreak, no reunion. The films reduce their entire relationship to a passing term of endearment and a brief, awkward glance. It's not that the films had no time, they had time for dancing scenes and visual flourishes. What they lacked was commitment to emotional storytelling. What is especially jarring is the moment before the Battle of Hogwarts. In the book, Tonks insists on joining the fight, leaving behind her newborn son. It is a desperate, reckless choice made out of love, for Lupin, for the world, for a better future. "I couldn't stand not knowing," she says, before vanishing into the night. Her death is a tragedy not just because she dies, but because she chose hope, chose action, chose love. In the film, there is no such moment. Tonks and Lupin lie side by side, dead, silent, background. The loss isn't just emotional, it's narrative. Tonks and Lupin's story is one of the few adult romances in Harry Potter that isn't filtered through a child's eyes. It's messy and sad and honest. It explores how trauma and shame sabotage love. It shows how people can run from happiness because they believe they don't deserve it. It shows how love persists anyway. And when they die, it means something. It's a gut punch. They were building a life. They had a child. They were trying to defy the odds. They mattered. In cutting this story, the films reduce them to symbols. Lupin becomes the sad professor. Tonks becomes the quirky aura. Their deaths are robbed of weight. We feel the loss of Fred, of Dobby, of Snape, even of Lavender Brown. But Tonks and Lupin, their bodies are a visual footnote. The camera pans across them with no pause, no music, no grief, no goodbye. We aren't asked to care because the films never taught us to. Imagine if we had seen Tonks waiting outside Grindelwald Place in the rain, hair dull, heartbroken. Imagine if we had seen Lupin watching her through a cracked window, fingers trembling, knowing he could never knock. Imagine if we had seen her Patronus shift in the night, a silent wolf dancing across the sky. These are not dramatic additions, they are in the text. They are canon. They are moments that deserved a frame. The loss is not just Tonks and Lupin's. It is ours. We are denied the chance to watch a man overcome self-hatred, to see a woman choose him again and again, not despite his scars, but because of them. We are denied the moment when he names their son Teddy because he is no longer afraid to leave behind something good. We are denied the small joys, the whispered jokes, the quiet nights during war. We are denied a love story that could have shown older, more complicated love. And that matters. When we read Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, we see Tonks's grief woven throughout the book. It's not front and center, but it is there, like a steady heartbeat. "The new one looks weak," says someone of her Patronus. Weakness, of course, has nothing to do with it. Her magic is not fading, it is reshaping. That detail alone says more than any monologue. And it's missing in the film. It takes no extra screen time to show her Patronus, just intention. In the Deathly Hallows, Lupin's return is a moment of catharsis. "I'm sorry I made you angry," he tells Harry. "I was wrong." Those words mean everything. He has accepted his role. He has embraced fatherhood. It is a quiet triumph. It is character growth. It is hard won. In the film, we see him walk through the door, nothing more. We're told he has a son, but never shown his joy, his fear, or his courage in facing it. There is something especially cruel in the way the film skips their deaths, not just in its silence, but in its framing. The Battle of Hogwarts is full of sound and fury, but this quiet death, this shared tragedy, is passed over. Two of the Order's bravest members, two people who stood against evil not with power, but with love, gone. It's easy to blame runtime, but choices were made. And this one hurts. Tonks and Lupin die holding hands in the books. That image alone is worth a scene. Rowling describes them lying as though asleep. It's not sentimental, it's devastating. A young mother, a reluctant hero. Their story ends in stillness, but it should have roared. The silence in the film feels like erasure, as if they never lived, as if their love never mattered. We remember Sirius's laughter, we remember Snape's tears, we remember Fred's final joke. But what of Lupin and Tonks? We remember nothing because we were given nothing. The books gave us a romance stitched together by moonlight and war. The films gave us a whisper and a corpse. One built a legacy, the other forgot. In the end, Teddy Lupin survives. In the epilogue, we hear of him briefly, kissing Victoire, carrying the legacy of parents he will never meet. And yet even there, his story is only lightly touched. What could have been a generational echo, a child born of love in darkness, is left to the imagination. We are left to imagine him growing up with Andromeda, to imagine Harry watching over him, to imagine him asking one day what a Patronus is and why his turns into a wolf. There are no second takes in war, there are no rewrites after death. But in storytelling, there are chances. And this one was missed. Lupin and Tonks were never just side characters. They were a reminder that love doesn't always come easy, that hope can be stubborn, and that even in the darkest times, someone will choose to stay. Their story was worth telling. The books knew that. The films forgot. Number 17, the conflict between Harry and Scrimgeour, was omitted. Of all the moments that vanished between page and screen, few are as ideologically charged or as quietly devastating as the confrontation between Harry Potter and Rufus Scrimgeour in Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. This scene, which never made it into the films, is not just a personal clash between a teenage boy and the Minister for Magic. It is a lightning-strike moment of political clarity where Harry publicly breaks with the establishment, refusing to become a pawn of government propaganda. Its absence leaves a cavernous hole in the narrative arc of Harry's maturation. And worse still, it robs us of a fundamental understanding of who Harry becomes in his final year. A rebel with principles, a leader forged not only in grief and battle, but in defiance of manipulation. Scrimgeour is introduced late in the 6th book, replacing the murdered Cornelius Fudge as Minister for Magic. He is not a Death Eater, nor even morally compromised in the way characters like Dolores Umbridge are. That's what makes him particularly insidious. He is a man of the system, a career aura who has stepped into power during a time of chaos and war. He brings with him the weight of bureaucracy, the inertia of an institution trying desperately to save face, and he sees in Harry Potter a symbol too powerful to waste. The boy who lived, beloved, lionized, and still publicly loyal to Dumbledore, could restore the public's faith in the ministry, if only he would cooperate. But Scrimgeour's mistake is assuming that Harry can be handled. He treats the 17-year-old as a tool to be sharpened and wielded rather than a young man who has learned the hard way never to trust those in authority blindly. The visit takes place at the Burrow shortly after Christmas, when the Weasleys are all gathered and tension is already thick in the air. Scrimgeour arrives under the guise of delivering Dumbledore's bequeathed items, gifts left for Harry, Ron, and Hermione. But his real goal is to measure Harry, to press him for allegiance. The encounter quickly spirals into a standoff. Scrimgeour's inquiries are transparent, and Harry sees through them with a clarity that borders on fury. When the minister questions why Dumbledore left Harry the golden snitch or the sword of Gryffindor, Harry refuses to yield. He invokes Dumbledore's memory with iron respect, not flinching even as the conversation takes on the sheen of interrogation. Scrimgeour, grown accustomed to being obeyed, grows frustrated. But Harry does not blink. In that moment, he demonstrates a maturity beyond his years. He knows that symbolism without substance is meaningless, and he will not be turned into a ministry mascot. The tipping point of their conversation comes when Scrimgeour, trying one last time to secure Harry's public support, says, "You would be giving everyone hope." Harry answers him with cold finality, "False hope." The line strikes like a blade. It is not a teenager's petulance. It is the judgment of someone who has walked through too many lies and seen too many graves. Harry does not want to comfort people with a smile for the front page of the Daily Prophet. He wants to fight the war the right way, and if that means being at odds with the ministry, so be it. What makes this scene essential is not just what is said, but what it reveals. This is Harry stepping into the role of a true leader, not of the ministry, not of a movement, but of his own destiny. It is the moment where he fully breaks from institutional authority. The boy who once sat nervously under the sorting hat now stands unshaken before the highest wizarding official in the land. He draws a line in the sand and says, "I will not be used." He does not shout. He does not plead. He simply refuses to be owned. This act of resistance is rooted in everything Harry has lived through. The ministry, after all, is not blameless. It spent the entire 5th year smearing Dumbledore and Harry himself, installing Umbridge at Hogwarts and punishing anyone who dared speak the truth. Now, with Voldemort's return undeniable, they wish to sweep all that under the rug. Scrimgeour is the new face of an old, failing system. He wants Harry to smile for the cameras, to give vague reassurances, to become the hero the ministry can control. But Harry knows better. The films erase Scrimgeour altogether. In the movie version of Deathly Hallows Part 1, the scene is replaced with a silent ministry broadcast and a quick montage. We never see the confrontation. We never hear Harry's defiance. Scrimgeour is introduced only to be killed off-screen, and with him goes one of the most politically charged moments in the series. What the audience is left with is a Harry who appears to move into the next phase of his journey without ever drawing the necessary line between himself and the state. It is not a small omission. Without the scene, Harry's ideological independence is flattened. His decision to go on the run, to reject ministry authority, and to follow Dumbledore's hidden instructions appears as a matter of logistics, not principle. The books, however, make it crystal clear. Harry is choosing a path of moral clarity over public approval. He is not just fleeing Voldemort, he is rejecting the compromise that the ministry offers. The absence of that nuance dulls the entire tone of the final book. Furthermore, this confrontation serves as a bookend to Harry's earlier experiences. In Order of the Phoenix, he raged against a government that tried to silence him. In Half-Blood Prince, he outgrows that rage and replaces it with resolution. He has no time for propaganda now, no interest in being anyone's symbol. The war has taken too much from him. His godfather is dead. His mentor is gone. He knows the cost of lies and half-measures, and he will not take part in them. Scrimgeour is not evil, and that makes his role even more important. He is the embodiment of well-meaning compromise. He believes in order, in control, in messaging, but in a war against evil, that isn't enough. Harry understands that when he refuses Scrimgeour, he is not just rejecting a man, he is rejecting the idea that survival alone is enough. He wants to win the war, in truth, not just to survive it with a smile. The gifts left by Dumbledore during that visit, especially the snitch, are layered with mystery, but even more significant is what the visit reveals about the late headmaster's trust. Dumbledore knew Harry would face pressure to conform. He knew the ministry would come calling, and he trusted that Harry would resist. That trust is rewarded. Harry does not betray the mission. He does not sell out his values. He remains, even at 17, profoundly and stubbornly his own man. The sword of Gryffindor becomes a symbol not just of bravery, but of resistance. Scrimgeour wants it for the ministry. Harry refuses to give it up. In retrospect, this tug-of-war over a relic foreshadows the battle for magical truth itself. The Ministry wants to decide what stories are told, which symbols are honoured, but Harry knows that truth does not bend to press releases. The sword will come to him when he truly deserves it, not when some bureaucrat demands it. This absence in the film also leaves viewers without a true sense of Scrimgeour's character. He was a man trying to manage a sinking ship with spit and tape. He was not the villain of the story, but he was part of the system that had failed too many times. Watching Harry stand against him is watching the torch being passed. The old ways are crumbling. The new guard, Harry, Hermione, Ron, will not be moulded by tired politics. Scrimgeour dies early in Deathly Hallows, reportedly tortured for refusing to give up Harry's location. In the book, his death carries weight. It shows that even flawed men can be brave. Even pawns of the state can defy tyranny in the end. But his earlier scene with Harry is what gives that death context. It proves that resistance is a choice and that even those trapped in the system can make the right call. Without it, his sacrifice feels empty. The books are not just stories about spells and monsters, they are deeply political narratives. They explore media manipulation, government failure, and moral autonomy. Harry's stand against Scrimgeour is one of the clearest examples of that. It's where the child hero becomes a revolutionary. He doesn't just want to win, he wants to be right. He wants to fight on his terms, not under the Ministry's banner. What is lost in the films is the sharp contrast between Harry and Voldemort, not just as magical opposites, but as ideological ones. Voldemort seeks total control. The Ministry under Scrimgeour seeks compliant cooperation. Harry chooses freedom. He will not be anyone's puppet. That is the essence of his character. It is not just about bravery, it is about integrity. In removing the Scrimgeour scene, the film softened the political edges of Harry's story. They made his rebellion seem inevitable rather than chosen. But in truth, it was a hard, lonely path. It meant alienating the government, the press, and much of the wizarding world. It meant trusting only a few close allies. And it meant accepting that he might be hated before he was understood. The confrontation with Scrimgeour is, in many ways, Harry's quiet declaration of independence. It is not marked with fanfare or spells. It is a conversation in a cozy room that changes the course of a war. It is proof that standing firm in your beliefs sometimes means saying no when the whole world wants you to say yes. Number 18. Harry repairing Draco's wand. An important moment that was left out. In the flickering half-light of the crumbling Hogwarts, with the echoes of battle still fresh and the air heavy with ash and wand sparks, a moment of quiet significance unfolded in the final pages of Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. It is not the defeat of Voldemort that holds the deepest weight, but what Harry does after the Dark Lord falls. Wounded and weary, he stands not as a victor who thirsts for dominion, but as a boy, finally free, finally whole, who makes a choice that says more about his soul than any act of heroism before. He uses the Elder Wand to repair his own broken wand, the Holly and Phoenix Feather Wand that was shattered in the escape from Malfoy Manor. It is a moment entirely absent from the film adaptation, and its loss is more than cinematic oversight. It is the deletion of a gesture rich in symbolic meaning, one that cements Harry's identity and his rejection of power. The book tells us with simple grace. Harry took the wand he had rescued from Dumbledore's tomb, and he used it to mend his own wand. The words seem almost modest, but the implications are profound. In using the Elder Wand, the most powerful wand in existence, the so-called Death Stick, the prize of tyrants, to restore his humble Holly Wand, Harry reaffirms who he is. He is not the master of death. He is not the ruler of wands. He is simply Harry, and he wants his old companion back. This act of restoration is not a flourish, it is a rejection. The Elder Wand could have been his forever. He had won it by disarming Draco Malfoy at Malfoy Manor, an act of accidental destiny that made Harry its master, and yet, in perhaps the most unorthodox turn in any hero's journey, he chooses not to wield it. He uses it only to fix what he had lost, and then returns it to Dumbledore's tomb. "If I die a natural death like Ignotus," Harry says earlier, "its power will be broken, won't it?" This shows his clear intention not to control death, not to dominate fate, but to step away from the game altogether. Contrast this with the movie, where in a dramatic display Harry snaps the Elder Wand in two and throws it into the abyss from a broken bridge. The gesture may look cinematic, of the hero destroying the ultimate weapon, but it lacks the quiet introspection of the book. It trades substance for spectacle. In removing the moment where Harry repairs his own wand, the film strips him of a deeply personal resolution. The Phoenix Feather Wand is more than wood and core. It represents Harry's growth, his bond with Dumbledore, and his alignment with something greater than power, his alignment with loyalty, with protection, and with love. The Holly Wand was not perfect. It did not overpower its opponents or grant him dominance, but it was his. It had chosen him when he was 11, and it had grown with him. It had fought beside him in the graveyard of Little Hangleton. It had protected him when his connection with Voldemort made his scar burn. And when it was destroyed, so too was a part of his identity, a part he quietly longed to restore. In mending it, Harry isn't just fixing an object, he is fixing a piece of himself. Wands in the Harry Potter universe are not merely tools, they are extensions of identity. The books make this abundantly clear. The wand chooses the wizard, Ollivander says, and we come to understand that these pairings are intimate, almost sacred. To lose one's wand is akin to losing a voice, a limb, a mirror. Hermione, Ron, and Harry each express a bond with their wands, but Harry's is especially central. It is the only wand that shares a core with Voldemort's, linking their destinies. When Harry's wand is destroyed by the curse from a Death Eater while escaping Nagini in Bathilda Bagshot's house, it is a devastating moment. The wand, once so loyal, sacrifices itself to protect him, an act that mirrors the love his mother gave him. This detail is quietly poetic. The wand, just like Lily, dies shielding him. And so when he restores it, he is in some ways acknowledging that love and the magic that is stronger than death. The film's omission of this restoration also weakens the narrative arc of wand loyalty. The Elder Wand's entire history, its allegiance, its bloodshed, its reputation, hinges on mastery. Dumbledore's duel with Grindelwald, Voldemort's obsession, Snape's murder, all of it ties back to the wand's twisted legacy. And yet Harry's decision to use it for repair, not destruction, breaks that cycle. It reframes the wand's purpose. From a symbol of conquest, it becomes a tool of healing. This choice also has consequences. Harry does not announce it. He does not proclaim himself the better wizard. He simply fixes his wand and returns the Elder Wand. That humility speaks louder than victory. It is a moment of quiet rebellion, one where he refuses to play by the rules of wizarding politics, dark magic, or even the legend of the Deathly Hallows. He chooses instead to walk away. That, in itself, is revolutionary. Let us remember, Draco Malfoy never intended to win the Elder Wand. He disarmed Dumbledore out of fear and desperation, not ambition. And yet the wand's allegiance shifted. That fragile chain of events, Draco's action, Harry disarming Draco, the wand responding to a new master, builds the whole climax. It is poetic that Draco, who was so often used and abused by darker forces, should accidentally become the pivotal figure in the Elder Wand's lineage. But the story never lingers on that. In fact, the film avoids addressing Draco's role altogether, preferring instead to dramatize Voldemort's downfall without tying off the narrative threads. The wand's restoration also deepens our understanding of Harry's relationship with Dumbledore. Albus Dumbledore, in death, was both a source of comfort and disappointment. Harry learns of his past, his ambitions, and his failures, but in choosing to return the Elder Wand to Dumbledore's tomb, Harry grants him forgiveness. He seals the wand away where it first rested, not in a vault, not in a ministry drawer, but in the hands of the man who tried, however imperfectly, to guard it. It is not triumph that guides this action, but a longing for peace. Another layer lies in the phoenix feather itself, from Fawkes, Dumbledore's companion. The connection circles back not just to Harry and Voldemort, but to Dumbledore and the entire chain of protectors. The phoenix symbolizes rebirth. When Harry repairs his wand, he is reborn as well, not as a warrior, but as a man who chooses life over legacy. The film's decision to destroy the Elder Wand entirely disregards this symbolic rebirth. Consider, too, the lesson in restraint. Harry has every reason to keep the Elder Wand. He has faced death, he has led armies, he has suffered losses that should have left him bitter, and yet he lets it go, not because he must, but because he can. This, more than any duel or incantation, proves his character. It is a message easily missed in the visual drama of a wand snapped in half. The book gently emphasizes that wands, like people, can be damaged, but they can also be healed. Harry's wand, like his heart, like his friends, like the very school they stand in, is not discarded but repaired. And that message matters. In an age of replacements and upgrades, Harry chooses restoration. He doesn't look for a stronger wand, a better core, or a more powerful tool. He wants his wand back, the one that knew him, protected him, and grew with him. Even the way the wand is mended is crucial. Harry does not need a spellbook or a potion. With the Elder Wand's unparalleled power and his own desire, he simply restores it. Magic in the Harry Potter universe is not just technique, it is will, emotion, connection. This scene is evidence that healing is a choice, often one that requires strength not of magic, but of intention. Had the film retained this moment, audiences might have walked away with a richer sense of closure. Instead, the visual of the Elder Wand breaking like a twig under Harry's fingers suggests finality without depth. It suggests that power must be destroyed, not understood, not redirected, not resolved. The book offers something more mature, that power can be refused, even used once to heal, and then laid to rest. It is important to note that this restoration was not just about Harry. It spoke to his future. In the epilogue, when we see Harry as a father, we understand that he has moved beyond his role as the chosen one. He is a man who made peace with his past. That peace began with a simple act, not defeating Voldemort, but mending a wand. In the end, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows is not a story of victory through strength. It is a story of choice, of morality, of choosing what is right over what is easy. By restoring his wand, Harry restores himself. He becomes a man who knows the value of the broken, who honors the old, who resists the seduction of might. And that, more than any duel, makes him a hero. The missed scene in the film is more than a trimmed subplot. It is the removal of a vital heartbeat, the proof that Harry understood, what few others could, that real power lies in letting go, not in snapping wands, but in restoring them, not in claiming mastery, but in walking away. And for those who read the books, this quiet act will always ring louder than any special effect. Number 19. Ariana Dumbledore's tragedy was not revealed. Ariana Dumbledore's name appears only in hushed sentences, flickering like a shadow behind Albus Dumbledore's towering legend. Her story, reduced in the films to little more than a whisper, is a quiet tragedy buried under the weight of history and power. But in the books, her presence is a wound that never healed, an echo of guilt that haunted the greatest wizard of his age until his final breath. She was just 6 years old when her life shattered, a child, young and fragile, born with magic so raw and uncontrolled that it pulsed through her like a storm. Ariana Dumbledore was no dark creature, no curse-bearer. She was simply magical and vulnerable. When 3 Muggle boys saw her performing wandless magic in the garden, they did not marvel at her wonder. They attacked her. It was a brutal act, unprovoked and filled with the kind of fear that always turns into violence. The assault was not only physical but spiritual. The trauma broke something inside her. In Gellert Grindelwald's words, she was damaged for life. From that day on, Ariana's magic turned inward. She could no longer control it. It surged and collapsed in violent, unpredictable bursts. Her father, Percival Dumbledore, responded not with words, but with vengeance. He hunted down the Muggle boys who hurt his daughter and attacked them in return. He never explained his actions at trial, knowing that if the wizarding world learned what had happened to Ariana, she might be taken away, locked in St. Mungo's, or worse. Percival was sentenced to Azkaban and died there, taking the truth with him. The Dumbledore family, already cracked, began to crumble. Kendra, Ariana's mother, moved the family to Godric's Hollow, away from prying eyes. She cared for Ariana in secret, hiding her from the world, not out of shame, but out of fear of what that world would do to a girl whose magic was volatile and misunderstood. Ariana's older brothers, Albus and Aberforth, grew up in a house of silence, secrets and tension. Kendra's death was sudden and violent. Ariana's magic had erupted again, out of control. Whether it was an accident or a panic, no one could say. But the explosion killed Kendra, and in that moment, Ariana lost the last person who had truly known how to calm her. Albus, freshly graduated from Hogwarts and brilliant beyond belief, was pulled back home. He had dreamt of power, of travel, of reshaping the wizarding world. Instead, he found himself trapped in a house of mourning with a sister who could barely function and a brother whose resentment burned like fire. It was in this crucible of frustration that Grindelwald arrived. Gellert Grindelwald, golden-haired and golden-tongued, brilliant and dangerous, was the spark that lit Albus's ambitions back to life. The two young men, barely more than boys, saw in each other reflections of their own genius. They talked of revolution, of breaking the statute of secrecy, of a world ruled by the greater good. But at the heart of it all was a lie they told themselves, that Ariana would be better off in a world where wizards ruled over muggles. For the greater good became a chant, a justification, a prophecy. Aberforth, grounded in reality, was not fooled. He accused them of using Ariana as a pawn in their fantasies. He argued rightly that she was not some symbol of the cause, but a girl in need of care. The confrontation turned violent. Wands were drawn. Albus, Aberforth, Grindelwald, three powerful young wizards, prideful and furious, fought in a blur of spells and shouted names. And in the chaos, Ariana died. The horror of that moment never left Albus Dumbledore. He never knew whose spell struck her. Perhaps it was his own. The guilt became a lodestone he carried all his life. When Harry Potter met Dumbledore in King's Cross Station in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, the old man finally admitted the weight of his burden. I was gifted. I was brilliant. I wanted to escape. I wanted to shine. I wanted glory. But he had failed her. He had failed Ariana, and it haunted every decision he ever made afterward. That single moment, the death of his sister, reframed Dumbledore's entire life. It was not just a tragedy, it was the turning point that transformed a hungry, power-driven young man into the cautious, manipulative mentor of Harry's generation. He never sought the power of the ministry, he rejected overt control, but in secret he built plans, alliances and strategies, moving pieces like a chess master, always 3 steps ahead, because he never again trusted himself with direct power. The films, so sweeping in their visuals and majestic in their scores, skim over this abyss in Dumbledore's past. They mention Ariana vaguely and briefly, but they do not show her. They do not tell us her name with the weight it deserves. They do not show her laughing in a garden or screaming in fear. They do not show Albus kneeling over her broken body. Without her, the audience never truly understands why Dumbledore is afraid of power, why he hesitated to face Grindelwald, why he waited too long as Voldemort rose. Her story is not just background, it is the missing piece of Dumbledore's puzzle. Without Ariana, his caution looks like calculation. With her, we understand that it is fear. Fear of becoming the man he once was, the boy who believed that ends justify means. When he tells Harry, "Do not pity the dead, Harry, pity the living, and above all those who live without love," he speaks from the ashes of personal loss. he speaks of Ariana. Ariana Dumbledore never went to Hogwarts. She never had friends or first loves. She never flew on a broomstick or bought a wand. Her life was stolen from her, not just by Muggle cruelty, but by a world that didn't know how to help her. Her name is barely written in the history books of the wizarding world. Yet she shaped two of the most powerful wizards of the century, Albus Dumbledore and Gellert Grindelwald. Her death split them forever. In The Life and Lies of Albus Dumbledore by Rita Skeeter, the story of Ariana is twisted and mocked, but even she, in her tabloid fury, cannot erase the pain. Aberforth, speaking to Harry in Deathly Hallows, cuts through all the illusions. He was never free. The night Ariana died, he lost his freedom. In that sentence lies the raw, simple truth. The war against Voldemort, the resistance, the Order of the Phoenix, all of it was born from a man trying to make peace with his own past. We never see Ariana's face in the films, but she lingers at the edge of every frame where Dumbledore pauses, where his eyes go distant. When he watches Harry take risks, when he lets others carry burdens he could bear, it's not cowardice, it's penance. He once took too much control, and it cost him his sister. He would not make that mistake again. The true tragedy of Ariana is that her story is not unique. How many magical children, volatile and frightened, have been hidden, misunderstood, or punished? The Obscurials, as introduced in Fantastic Beasts, are essentially echoes of Ariana's fate. They are the magical residue of pain. When Credence Barebone loses control, when the streets explode around him, we are watching a reflection of the girl in Godric's Hollow. J.K. Rowling never states it outright, but the implication is clear. Ariana may have been the first recorded Obscurial. If that is true, then she was not just a tragedy. She was a warning, a plea for compassion in a world too eager to fear what it cannot understand. The world sees Dumbledore as a hero, a sage, a master of magic, but Harry sees him cry. He sees the frailty, the regret, the humanity. "You cannot despise me more than I despise myself," Dumbledore confesses. It is not Voldemort who broke him. It was not Grindelwald, not even the loss of his hand to the cursed ring. It was Ariana. It was the sister whose life he could not save and whose death he might have caused. There is no gravestone shown in the films, no memorial. But in the books we know she lies next to her mother in Godric's Hollow, under the snow, under the inscription, "Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also." It is a quiet line pulled from Scripture, but also from Dumbledore's own battered soul. His treasure was not power or knowledge or glory. It was the family he lost. It was Ariana. Every time Dumbledore looked at the Elder Wand, he must have remembered the day he met Grindelwald. Every time he sent a student into danger, he must have heard Aberforth's voice. Every victory in the war was paid for by the memory of a girl with wide eyes and magic she never asked for. We often talk about Dumbledore's brilliance, his wisdom, his cryptic guidance, but we forget that behind every line he spoke, there was a ghost. Her name was Ariana, and her tragedy was not just that she died, but that she was forgotten by the world that failed her. Number 20. Percy Weasley's return was not shown. Percy Weasley's estrangement from his family was never a loud or dramatic affair in the books. It was a slow unraveling, a quiet, painful separation, caused not by hatred, but by pride, ambition, and misplaced loyalty. When readers first witness Percy breaking away from the Weasley family, it is with a mix of disappointment and heartbreak. He doesn't slam the door behind him. He simply walks away. He chooses the Ministry of Magic over his parents, Cornelius Fudge's agenda over Dumbledore's wisdom, and career advancement over brotherhood. For several books, Percy is absent not only physically but emotionally from everything that once made him a Weasley. The warmth, the laughter, the chaos, the unity. J.K. Rowling paints this fracture not as a betrayal in the traditional sense, but as a tragedy of delusion. Percy isn't evil. He's not even cruel. He's just wrong. He's a young man who wants so badly to be respected in a world that often mocks his family for being poor, eccentric, and unfashionably brave. The Ministry gives him that validation. His family, in his view, only holds him back. So he turns his back on them and, for a while, seems to thrive. But Percy's absence becomes more than just a subplot. It's a slow-burning fuse of emotional tension, made heavier by each holiday he misses, each battle he sits out, each lie he tells himself. In Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, the gap becomes stark. While Fred, George, and even Ginny are fighting for Dumbledore's army, Percy is penning cold letters to Ron, warning him to keep his distance from Harry and the Order. It's a moment that stings more because of how familiar it feels. The pain of a loved one who genuinely believes they're helping by siding with the wrong people. Percy's letter is not written with malice, but with conviction, and that makes it even more devastating. He thinks he's saving Ron from ruin. In reality, he's cementing his place on the wrong side of history. Yet Rowling does not abandon Percy to his mistakes. His story is not just one of failure, but of redemption. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, after years of silence, Percy finally opens his eyes. When the Ministry falls to Voldemort and becomes a puppet of darkness, Percy's world shatters. All the structure, rules, and order he clung to are corrupted. The institution he worshipped becomes the very monster his family always warned him about. And then, as if waking from a spell, Percy returns. And he walks into the Battle of Hogwarts not as a Ministry official, but as a brother, a son, a Weasley again. The moment of his return is captured poignantly in the book. As the battle rages and the walls of Hogwarts tremble, Percy bursts into the room of requirement. "Hello, Minister," he says to pious thickness, in what Rowling describes as a wonderfully pompous voice. But this time, he's not playing politics, he's mocking them. Percy fights alongside Fred and George, bantering, laughing, even crying. It is during this brief and beautiful window of reconciliation that tragedy strikes. Fred dies mid-laughter, mid-sentence, with Percy beside him. The heartbreak is unbearable and Rowling does not flinch. Percy's scream is described as unlike anything Harry had ever heard before. It is the cry of a man who had just rejoined his family, only to lose one of them in the same breath. This convergence of joy and devastation, reconciliation and death, is one of the most powerful emotional arcs in the entire series. Percy, who had missed years of family dinners, birthdays and weddings, finally comes home. And in doing so, he is forced to face the bitter truth that sometimes redemption comes too late. His last moments with Fred are a cruel mix of comedy and catastrophe, and Rowling doesn't offer the luxury of a peaceful resolution. Percy's forgiveness is earned, but the price is steep. And then comes the film adaptation, Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Part 2. In the flurry of spells and flashbacks, Percy appears on screen as if nothing had ever happened. He is simply there, in the background, as if the years of estrangement, the ideological divide, the betrayal, the heartbreak, the letter to Ron, the silence at Christmas, the missing chairs at the Burrow, as if none of it mattered. No words, no explanation, no catharsis. The screenwriters chose silence over redemption, and that silence is deafening. It's not just a minor oversight, it's the erasure of one of the most human storylines in the entire saga. Percy's fall from grace and his return is not about battles or wands or Death Eaters. It's about family. It's about realizing that being right is less important than being kind, that standing with the ones you love is more powerful than standing with those in power. By omitting Percy's return and reconciliation, the film loses a crucial layer of emotional complexity. It reduces him to a background character when he was, for a brief moment, the beating heart of the Weasley family's journey. Consider how the books gave us this gift, the image of Percy and Fred dueling side by side, laughing, joking, rediscovering brotherhood. "Did I hear that correctly?" Fred says. "The Ministry has fallen, and you're actually here?" The two exchange barbs like old times. It's a moment that feels like sunlight breaking through storm clouds, a family reunited, even if just for a second. The loss that follows hits harder because of that light. By contrast, the film gives us none of this. We do not hear Fred's last words. We do not see Percy scream. We do not feel the tragedy of a brother mourning a brother he just got back. We are robbed of the chance to witness what redemption looks like when it's hard-earned. Instead, we're given a funeral without a eulogy. It is not that every subplot can or should be adapted in full. The limitations of cinema are real. But in cutting Percy's arc, the film does more than trim fat. It removes a vital organ. The Weasley family's strength was always in its imperfection. Arthur and Molly argue. Ron gets jealous. Fred and George are reckless. Ginny is stubborn. And Percy strays. But in the end, they always find their way back to each other. That is the magic of the Weasleys. And that magic is lost in the film. Even for audiences unfamiliar with the books, a few lines could have preserved the arc. A moment in the Great Hall, a line exchanged with Fred, a look from Molly, a sob after Fred's death, anything. But there is nothing. Percy's presence is incidental, silent, meaningless, and that silence turns what could have been a profound moment into a missed opportunity. The tragedy of Fred's death is undercut without the context of Percy's return. It's not just a brother who dies, it's a brother who dies after forgiving, after embracing, after laughing. That complexity is what makes the loss resonate. In the book, when Percy clutches Fred's body and refuses to leave him, it's not just grief, it's guilt too. It's the ache of wasted time, the kind that makes you scream, not because of pain, but because of regret. Percy's story is also a lesson for anyone who has ever put pride before love, or ambition before family. It reminds us that it's never too late to return, but that returning doesn't guarantee a happy ending. Redemption is real, but it doesn't always come with closure. In Percy's case, it comes with tears, screams, and a lifetime of wondering if he could have done more. This emotional weight is what made Percy's arc so unforgettable in the books. His journey is not heroic in the traditional sense. He doesn't slay a dragon, he doesn't destroy a Horcrux, he simply walks back into the room, apologizes, and stays. That's his victory. And in a world full of epic magic and dark lords, that kind of victory, personal, emotional, raw, is the rarest of all. Fred's death is tragic no matter how it's told. But in the book, it's more than a casualty of war. It's the devastating punctuation to a story about family, forgiveness, and fate. When Percy cradles Fred's body, he holds more than just his brother. He holds every unsaid word, every missed holiday, every arrogant decision. And we, as readers, hold our breath because we feel all of it. In skipping Percy's return, the film removes that breath. It skips the guilt, the growth, the grief. It tells us that Fred is dead, but not what that death means to the brother who came back too late. It shows us a battlefield, but not the battles fought inside hearts, and perhaps that's the real loss. Not of a character, but of a truth, that sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is come home. Number 21. Gellert Grindelwald's backstory was missing. Of all the haunting shadows in the Harry Potter universe, few loom as largely and yet remain as curiously unexplored as Gellert Grindelwald. While Tom Riddle's transformation into Lord Voldemort has captivated readers with its tragic clarity and detailed descent into darkness, the tale of Grindelwald remains scattered across fragments and whispered memories. And yet Grindelwald was not merely another villain. In his youth, he rivaled Voldemort in brilliance, vision, and menace. His ideology shaped the magical world, and his influence reached the soul of Albus Dumbledore himself. To know Dumbledore truly, to understand the sorrow behind the twinkle in his eyes and the iron restraint in his voice, one must understand Grindelwald. Yet the films reduce this powerful character to a name dropped in passing, and a glimpse of a prison cell. A profound chapter of magical history saturated with philosophy, love, guilt, and ambition is left to decay in the margins. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, J.K. Rowling finally cracks open the carefully guarded box of Dumbledore's past. And out comes Gellert Grindelwald, once a boy with eyes bright, brilliant, and alert, who arrived in Godric's Hollow not to find a friend, but to find an accomplice. The summer he spent with Dumbledore was brief, but it carved deep scars into the soul of the man who would one day be Hogwarts' revered headmaster. Together they dreamt of revolution. They believed, for a fleeting, dangerous moment, that the world would be better if ruled by those with the power to reshape it. For the greater good, they told themselves, words that would become the motto of Grindelwald's dark regime. It is not merely the idea of magical superiority that makes Grindelwald's story so chilling. Unlike Voldemort, who sought immortality through fear, Grindelwald wanted control through seduction, through ideology. He was charismatic, persuasive, and philosophical. He did not kill for sport, but for principle. He spoke of uniting the wizarding world, of freeing it from the shadows, and perhaps most dangerously of all, he truly believed what he preached. In The Life and Lies of Albus Dumbledore, Rita Skeeter reveals, albeit with tabloid flair, that Dumbledore once stood on the same side of the argument. The horror of that youthful agreement never left him. The tragedy that shattered the alliance between Albus and Gellert came in the form of Ariana Dumbledore, Albus's younger sister, a child traumatized into magical instability. When the three young wizards, Albus, Gellert, and Aberforth, argued over the future, Ariana was caught in the middle. A spell struck her down. No one knew whose wand had dealt the fatal blow. "I don't know which of us did it," Dumbledore later confessed to Harry, "but it might have been mine." That single sentence is the key to Dumbledore's soul. It is guilt, buried so deep it shapes everything he becomes. It is the reason he refuses the post of Minister for Magic, why he keeps power at a distance, and why he mentors Harry not with fire and force, but with quiet wisdom and restraint. Yet in the film adaptations, Grindelwald appears almost as a footnote. He is mentioned briefly in The Philosopher's Stone, with his defeat by Dumbledore noted on a chocolate frog card. Later, in The Deathly Hallows Part 1, we see him in a shadowed flashback stealing the Elder Wand. And finally, in Part 2, he is visited by Voldemort in Nurmengard prison, where he refuses to betray the wand's location. That is all. For a character so central to the shaping of Dumbledore's worldview and to the very history of the wizarding world, this is criminally insufficient. Imagine watching the Deathly Hallows as a newcomer. The trio searches for Deathly Hallows. A symbol appears. Xenophilius Lovegood references it, and then, out of nowhere, a flashback to two boys, Dumbledore and Grindelwald, talking about a vision. It is rushed, cryptic, and devoid of emotional weight. The audience is told that Dumbledore once duelled Grindelwald, that he defeated him in 1945, but there is no soul to the story, no exploration of the ideology that nearly doomed Dumbledore, no explanation of the fear that grips him when he tells Harry, "I was afraid I'd see him, and I'd do nothing." This is not a mere oversight, it is a loss of narrative depth. The duel between Dumbledore and Grindelwald was considered one of the most legendary battles in magical history. It lasted for hours and altered the course of the wizarding world, but more than that, it was a duel of grief, of betrayal, of love curdled into tragedy. Dumbledore delayed it for years, not because he lacked power, but because he lacked courage. "I delayed it for so long because I was afraid," he told Harry. "It was the truth I feared." Grindelwald's absence in the films also erodes the moral complexity of the Hallows themselves. The Elder Wand, one of the three legendary Hallows, is the wand of conquest. It passed from wizard to wizard through murder and betrayal, until Grindelwald stole it from Grigorovich. In the books, Grindelwald's possession of the Elder Wand is not just about power, it's about ideology. He believed the wand gave him the right to rule. His entire campaign was built on the mythic foundation of the Hallows. That is why Dumbledore, who once shared that dream, was the only one who could end it. The decision to exclude this rich backstory also undermines the emotional payoff of Dumbledore's character arc. His wisdom, his restraint, his support of Harry's choices all stem from lessons learned through Grindelwald. When he tells Harry, "Do not pity the dead, Harry. Pity the living, and above all, those who live without love," he is speaking from experience. He lived without love after Ariana's death. He lived in the ruins of a dream built with Grindelwald, and he chose again and again not to wield power, but to guide others toward it with humility. The Fantastic Beasts films later attempted to revive Grindelwald's story, but by then the narrative damage was done. His name, already reduced in the main series, was unfamiliar to general audiences, and the film's shifting tones and recasting muddled the clarity of his menace. The nuanced political debates, the ideological seductions, and the spiritual duel between Dumbledore and Grindelwald became lost in visual effects and convoluted plotting. It's not just about giving Grindelwald more screen time, it's about restoring a central theme that threads through the entire series, the seductive nature of power and the choices we make in response to it. In The Half-Blood Prince, when Dumbledore and Harry visit the cave, Dumbledore drinks the cursed potion that brings him to the brink of madness. He pleads, "Don't hurt them, please, hurt me instead." Some readers believe this is a vision of Harry and Hermione, but others believe he is reliving the death of Ariana. Her ghost and Grindelwald's betrayal never left him. Dumbledore is not a flawless mentor. He is a man built on failures. The readers come to admire him not because he is perfect, but because he learns from his sins. And the deepest of those sins was Grindelwald. To omit that relationship is to flatten Dumbledore into a trope, the wise old man with a twinkle in his eye, when in truth he was a shattered idealist who clawed his way back to moral clarity. Even Voldemort's storyline suffers from Grindelwald's absence. The Dark Lord's obsession with the Elder Wand stems from his misunderstanding of its history. He believes power lies in death. But Grindelwald once used that same wand to seduce an entire generation. In refusing to tell Voldemort the wand's location, Grindelwald meets his death with dignity. It is perhaps his only act of redemption. "Kill me, then," he says in the book. "I welcome death, but my death will not bring you what you seek." In that moment, Grindelwald is not a villain, but a man facing the abyss of his legacy, and his silence becomes louder than Voldemort's fury. The irony is crushing. The man who once chased immortality with ideology now embraces death as his only act of resistance. This is not just a plot point, it is a spiritual climax, but in the films it passes like a breeze, no meaning, no echo. There is a great narrative tragedy in Harry Potter, and it is not just the deaths of characters or the fall of innocence. It is the erasure of the philosophical foundation that Dumbledore's life rests on. Without Grindelwald, the reader does not fully understand what it means when Dumbledore tells Harry, "You are the true master of death." That mastery does not come from owning all three hallows. It comes from refusing them, from choosing love over domination, from rejecting the seductive call of the greater good. Gellert Grindelwald should never have been a footnote. He was the ghost behind the curtain, the shadow in Dumbledore's mirror. He was not Voldemort's predecessor. He was Dumbledore's reflection and warning. And in the silent gap he leaves behind in the films, something vital is lost, not just a character, but a choice, a moral turning point that ripples through every page of the saga, a choice that Dumbledore made and spent a lifetime mourning. Number 22. The Battle of Hogwarts was shortened and oversimplified. Of all the cinematic liberties taken throughout the Harry Potter film series, none feel more painful, more hollow than the sacrifice of the Battle of Hogwarts. In the final installment of the books, J.K. Rowling built the climax of 7 years of magic, rebellion, and resistance into a sprawling, emotionally charged, character-driven battle that echoed through the entire wizarding world. But the film adaptation, for all its spectacle and flashes of wandlight, stripped the moment of its soul. It reduced the battle to a whirlwind of stone and flame, ignoring the delicate threads of personal sacrifice and communal strength that had made the book's conclusion unforgettable. In the book, the castle doesn't just fall under attack, it becomes a living character. Its shifting staircases, enchanted suits of armor, and hidden passageways all rise up in defense. Hogwarts breathes and bleeds, The castle grounds were full of witches and wizards running, fighting, screaming, the narrator describes. This is not a skirmish, this is war. Giants battle centaurs, house elves fight with knives, acromantulas pour in through broken walls. Yet in the film, these magical dimensions are left largely to the imagination. We see only flashes and the occasional burst of rubble, a giant or two lumbering in the background, never the rich tapestry of chaos that Rowling composed. Perhaps most glaring is the absence of Sybil Trelawney's quiet defiance. In the books, the divination professor is no longer a fluttery figure of comic relief. She hurls crystal balls from the balcony, one of which knocks out a Death Eater. In a moment of bitter irony, the woman whose prophecies shaped the fate of the wizarding world finds herself overlooked in the very battle that decides its future. Yet the film omits her entirely. Her role and her agency are discarded. Even less forgivable is the removal of the house elves' charge. In one of the most heart-stirring moments in the novel, Kreacher leads the kitchen staff into battle, shrieking, "Fight! Fight! Fight for my master, defender of house elves!" This is redemption. This is revolution. Creatures long relegated to slavery reclaim their honor and autonomy. The film says nothing of it. Instead, house elves are erased from the narrative at the very moment they deserve to stand proud. And where, in the film, is Firenze, the centaur? In the book, the centaurs descend from the forbidden forest, long hesitant to involve themselves in human affairs. Their appearance signifies a unity beyond the castle walls, the magical world itself coming to Harry's side. Their absence in the film is symbolic not only of cut content but of a diluted message. The victory in Rowling's story is not just Harry's, it is a collective stand of many marginalized groups. That meaning is lost when such allies are rendered invisible. Then there is the complete removal of Madame Hooch. Known primarily as the stern-eyed flying instructor, she returns in the book to fight in the defense of the only home she's ever known. Her presence is brief but powerful, a callback to the earliest days of Harry's Hogwarts journey. It's a subtle touch of narrative completeness, and it's gone from the screen. Most egregious is the film's cold detachment from death. Fred Weasley's demise is not shown. We see only his family grieving beside his lifeless body. In the book, Rowling lets us feel the shock as the explosion rips through the corridor. George is nearby. Percy, newly reconciled with his family, is there too. And Percy was shaking his brother, and Ron was kneeling beside them, and Fred's eyes stared without seeing. It is sudden, brutal, unfair. We're meant to cry, to rage, to grieve. The film moves on. Tonks and Lupin fare no better. Their love, their resistance, and their legacy through their newborn son, Teddy, all vanish into a line of corpses. In the book, we are told Lupin, his body curled around Tonks's, their hands almost touching. There is poetry in the detail, a final image of two souls who had found peace in each other, lost together in war. The film gives no such moment. Their deaths are unseen, unspoken. How can viewers mourn without memory? Lavender Brown, another casualty of war, is reduced to a corpse glimpsed in passing. Yet in the book, her fate is clearer, more tragic, mauled by Fenrir Greyback in the thick of battle. It is a moment that re-emphasizes the ferocity of Voldemort's followers and the randomness of death. In the film, it becomes just another body on the floor. Even characters who survive the battle are robbed of their narrative arcs. Professor Slughorn, a character once obsessed with safety and self-preservation, joins the resistance in the final stand, dueling Voldemort himself alongside McGonagall and Kingsley. The book makes clear, 3 against 1, Rowling writes. He was fighting for his life. It is a powerful redemptive moment. The film changes this into a private showdown between Harry and Voldemort, eliminating the communal resistance that gives the victory meaning. The same goes for Neville Longbottom's transformation. Yes, the film gives him the sword. Yes, he slays Nagini. But in the book, Neville's arc culminates in him rejecting Voldemort's offer to join him. He stands, broken and defiant, and says, "I'll join you when hell freezes over." It is met with silence in the film, not the collective gasp of the assembled students and Death Eaters that the book describes. Neville's stand is more than bravery. It is prophecy realized. The boy who could have been the chosen one, finally rising. Then there is the matter of Ginny. In the book, she is fierce, passionate, present. She fights at the front lines despite efforts to keep her safe. She is a reflection of Molly Weasley, who, in one of the most cathartic scenes in the entire saga, screams, "Not my daughter, you bitch," before dueling Bellatrix Lestrange to the death. That scene made it into the film, yes, but not with the full gravity. The tension of the moment is rushed, the danger muted. Bellatrix's madness, her cruelty, her taunting, all reduced. The ghosts of Hogwarts, the Grey Lady, the Bloody Baron, would also carry narrative weight in the books. The Grey Lady, Helena Ravenclaw, confesses her tragic past and her role in the creation of a Horcrux. Her story adds emotional weight and critical knowledge. In the film, her story is reduced to a rushed exchange, stripped of sorrow and revelation. The viewer is not invited to care for her, only to accept her function. Another striking loss is the personal stakes for Percy Weasley. In the books, his return to the family is fraught, heartfelt, and ends in tragedy as Fred dies at his side. His arc, from ministry pawn to grieving brother, gives texture to the battle. In the film, Percy barely exists. His repentance, his grief, his journey, each gone. Aberforth Dumbledore's confrontation with Harry is another missed opportunity. His bitterness, his cynicism, and his ultimate decision to fight offer a stark counterpoint to Albus's legacy. Aberforth is not a mentor, he is a realist, but he still stands. He chooses to protect students in the Hog's Head and help smuggle them to safety. His story offers adult complexity. The film barely lets him speak. Even the final duel, Harry versus Voldemort, loses its intimacy. In the book, it happens in the Great Hall, surrounded by the survivors. Harry calls Voldemort by his true name, Tom Riddle, strips him of power with words as much as magic, and offers him a chance to repent. Voldemort refuses, and his death is quiet, almost pitiful. Tom Riddle hit the floor with a mundane finality. The film turns this into a CGI-fueled sky battle, Voldemort's body disintegrating into ashes. It is loud, cinematic, and forgettable. Harry's decision to repair his wand with the Elder Wand and then snap the latter in two is symbolic. It is his rejection of power. In the book, he quietly mends his own wand and returns the Elder Wand to Dumbledore's tomb. The moment is thoughtful, intimate. In the film, it's a dramatic snap, simplistic and rushed, like so much of the battle itself. But perhaps the greatest tragedy of all is that in condensing the battle to a visual storm, the film denies the audience their grief. The book gives readers space to mourn, to sit in silence with the bodies in the Great Hall, to feel the weight of war. The film offers none of that, no time for stillness, no time for sorrow. The Battle of Hogwarts was never meant to be mere action. It was a culmination of loyalty, loss, and love. Every creature, every corner of the castle, every student and staff member had a part to play. It was not about Harry alone. It was about everyone who stood and said, "Not today." The film forgot that, and in doing so, it forgot what made the books truly magical. Number 23, the story of Crabbe, Goyle, and Malfoy in Deathly Hallows was rewritten. Of all the narrative decisions made in the Harry Potter film adaptations, few are as quietly consequential as the rewriting of the Room of Requirement scene in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. Part 2. At first glance, the change appears subtle. A character swap, a shift in magical responsibility, a new face among the trio of Slytherins. Yet beneath the surface lies a dismantled philosophy, one of the most profound symbolic moments from J.K. Rowling's final novel is wiped clean for cinematic convenience. The result is more than a character's absence, it is a story robbed of its moral arc. In the book, the moment unfolds with the subtle weight of inevitability. Draco Malfoy, Vincent Crabbe, and Gregory Goyle confront Harry, Ron, and Hermione in the chaos of the Room of Requirement, now transformed into a vast, shifting repository of forgotten treasures. Their motives are tangled, not heroism, but pride, vengeance, confusion. Crabbe, whose usual role in the saga has been that of a bumbling follower, steps out of his shadowed role to wield something terrifying, fiend fire. This cursed flame, described as a magical fire capable of consuming nearly anything, is beyond the control of even experienced wizards. Crabbe invokes it recklessly, driven by panic and bravado. He cannot command it. In Rowling's words, a great snake of fire reared from the broken furniture, sending roaring flames in every direction. What follows is not merely action, it is thematic culmination. Crabbe, in his act of blind destruction, loses control. The fiend fire engulfs him, killing him instantly and devouring the very space he sought to dominate. This fire, untamable and ancient, does something else. It destroys the Horcrux hidden in the diadem of Ravenclaw, a dark relic infused with a fragment of Voldemort's soul. Harry doesn't cast a curse. Hermione doesn't conjure a countercharm. Ron doesn't smash it. Evil devours itself. This moment, brutal in its poetry, marks a turning point, the death of a Horcrux not by heroism, but by the collapse of the dark forces themselves. Rowling allows us to witness a parable, hatred turned inward. Yet in the film this vision is erased. Vincent Crabbe is gone, his absence never explained within the diegetic world. Off-screen, the truth is mundane. Actor Jamie Waylett had been arrested and removed from the production. Rather than recast or reimagine the scene to preserve its symbolism, the filmmakers replace him with Blaise Zabini, a character with no meaningful narrative arc tied to Harry's journey. Zabini, who never belonged to the inner circle of Slytherin antagonists, is suddenly present without context or explanation. This is not just a casting decision, it is a narrative fracture. Worse still, the act of destruction is transferred to Goyle. In the film, Goyle, not Crabbe, casts fiendfire and is consumed by it. At a glance, this seems like a minor reshuffle, but its implications are vast. Goyle has never shown the capability, arrogance, or temperament to wield such magic. The result is a scene stripped of character development and narrative logic. It is merely spectacle. The room explodes with fire, the characters flee, and the diadem is burned, but not because of the inner self-destruction of evil. Rather, it is an accident of chaos, a misplaced explosion in a fantasy action sequence. The message is flattened. In removing Crabbe's fall and transferring the moment to Goyle, the film abandons the moral precision Rowling so carefully constructed. This was never meant to be just a room on fire. It was meant to echo the mythic structure that evil cannot contain itself. The Horcrux, a vessel of Voldemort's fragmented soul, dies not in a noble duel, but in the inferno born from the arrogance and hatred of one of his own ideological heirs. Rowling's message is clear. Voldemort's legacy breeds not loyalty, but self-immolation. "He's gone," Ron shouts in the book, staring into the flames as they consume Crabbe. The fire, it's the fiend fire, but this moment, this terror, is missing from the film's heartbeat. One of the most compelling elements of this scene in the book is that Crabbe is not evil in the operatic sense. He is not a Death Eater nor a dark wizard with lofty goals. He is a teenage boy raised in a world of prejudice and entitlement, given too much power and too little guidance. When he unleashes fiendfire, it is a moment of uncontrolled fury, not masterful intent. He becomes, briefly, the architect of his own end, a small echo of Voldemort himself. This is a parable about how ordinary people, driven by fear and hate, can become instruments of destruction. The film reduces him to a missing name. In Zabini's presence and Goyle's death, the film also dilutes Draco Malfoy's character arc. In the novel, Draco's helplessness, his horror, as Crabbe is consumed by the fire, is part of his slow unraveling. He no longer controls his fate or his allies. He reaches out, desperate, and it is Harry who saves him. That moment of salvation between enemies is striking because it comes at the cost of Crabbe's self-inflicted demise. In the movie, the tension is lessened. Draco, flanked by unfamiliar faces, appears more as a background figure than a lost soul on the edge of a breaking point. Rowling's philosophical underpinning, that evil ultimately consumes itself, depends on the moral weight of consequence. Crabbe is not killed by a rival's spell. He dies from a fire of his own, conjuring a spell he cannot control. This is not a triumph of good over evil. It is evil collapsing under its own weight. The room of hidden things becomes a tomb, not because heroes won a duel, but because darkness imploded. Crabbe must have released fiendfire, Hermione says in the book. It's one of the most dangerous kinds of magic. That danger was never meant to be flashy, it was meant to be metaphor. The visual power of the fire in the film is undeniable. Dragons of flame coil and snap, towers of heat chase the trio across the collapsing floorboards, but it is all noise. There is no moral gravity to the flames. The audience may be thrilled, but they are not moved. The destruction of the Horcrux happens almost by coincidence. In the book, Harry realizes the diadem has been destroyed only after the smoke has cleared. He watches it vanish, the piece of Voldemort's soul screaming as it burns. This quiet moment is gone in the movie. There is no scream, no soul, just fire. Even the Room of Requirement, a magical space of endless transformation, serves a purpose in the novel beyond being a battleground. It is a place of memory, a repository of forgotten ambitions and discarded artifacts. Crabbe's death in this room, among the remnants of others' obsessions, is fitting. He dies not in glory, but in a pile of broken dreams. The film recasts the space as a simple obstacle course. The poetic symmetry is lost. It is not only a narrative loss, but a thematic betrayal. The Horcruxes are symbolic of Voldemort's attempt to escape death. Each one is meant to be destroyed by a different force: love, bravery, loyalty, sacrifice, and, in Crabbe's case, the inability of hatred to wield true control. When the film turns this destruction into an accident, it severs the emotional architecture Rowling designed. It suggests that evil can be beaten by chance rather than by consequence. Goyle's death, meanwhile, carries no weight. The character is barely distinguishable in the film, a shadow of the oafish sidekick he was. His death feels perfunctory. The audience does not mourn, does not reflect. There is no moment of recognition. Crabbe's death in the book, while sudden, is framed with horror. His own allies recoil. Even Harry, watching him burn, is shaken. This death means something. Draco's redemption arc, already subtle and complex, is diminished in the film without Crabbe. The boy who once laughed at mudbloods, who stood proud beside his bullies, is now a ghost among strangers. His desperation is harder to read, his fall from grace less personal. Without Crabbe, there is no anchor to his past, no loss that feels real, no sense that the world he grew up in is collapsing around him. The film trades symbolism for scale. Instead of a moral reckoning, we get a chase scene. Instead of an act of hubris destroying its creator, we get a generic death. The themes of the series, of how evil behaves, of how power corrupts, of how even small men can fall, are left unexplored. Rowling's masterstroke is lost beneath a blaze of special effects. Perhaps most disappointing is that this was the final Horcrux destroyed before Harry faces Voldemort. In the book, it feels like the natural next step in a journey of sacrifice and unraveling evil. In the film, it is a pit stop before the real showdown. The philosophical crescendo of self-destruction is reduced to a visual teaser. The Room of Requirement scene, as originally written, is not about heroes vanquishing villains. It is about how evil, when wielded by those who do not understand it, becomes a force of annihilation even for its masters. It is a warning, a meditation, a rare moment when the story allows darkness to betray itself. And in the film, that moment is gone, not because it couldn't be shown, but because it wasn't understood. Number 24. Draco Malfoy's inner conflict in the 6th part was absent. In Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, J.K. Rowling crafts one of the most quietly devastating arcs in the entire series, and it belongs not to Harry, not to Dumbledore, but to Draco Malfoy. No longer the sneering boy who throws around insults in the corridors of Hogwarts, Draco is pulled into the darkness in a way that feels both terrifying and deeply human. Rowling does not merely imply that he is in over his head. She shows it, with trembling hands, tear-streaked cheeks, and a young wizard collapsing beneath the weight of a mission he never wanted. It is this haunting portrayal of a boy unraveling that makes his sixth-year arc one of the most compelling in the books, and it is this same arc that is tragically hollowed out in the film adaptation. Draco's assignment is not merely to hurt, but to kill. Voldemort doesn't give him a prank to play or a task of humiliation. He is expected to assassinate Albus Dumbledore, the most powerful wizard alive, a man Draco has grown up despising but never truly confronting. This task is no reward. It is punishment, vengeance served cold to Lucius Malfoy through his son. The boy becomes a message. If Draco should fail, Snape tells Bellatrix and Narcissa in Spinner's End, Lord Voldemort will kill him. The threat is clear, the stakes are absolute, and the terror is real. Rowling gives Draco internal space to fall apart. There are scenes where he vanishes from the rest of the story, not to plot, but to survive. The most important of these comes not in a duel or a confrontation, but in a bathroom. There, under the flickering lights and the dull echo of dripping taps, Draco stands at the mirror and weeps. His white face was gaunt and shadowed, his eyes sunken and red. It is not just fear that grips him, but despair. The reader is not left to imagine Draco's torment. They are shown his hollow eyes, his shaking breath, his futile efforts to repair the vanishing cabinet, and the long, slow corrosion of his soul. In contrast, the film gives us little more than a blank expression and a closed door. Tom Felton is given almost no dialogue, no monologue, no scene that matches the emotional clarity of the book. His presence is reduced to a string of brooding stares down corridors and a final, rushed confrontation at the Astronomy Tower. The bathroom scene, where in the book Draco is injured and exposed by Harry's use of Sectum Sempra, is muted. The film almost seems embarrassed to dwell too long on the boy's vulnerability, and in doing so it robs the story of one of its most heartbreaking truths. Draco doesn't want this war. He's not a Death Eater in heart, only in brand. The dark mark on his arm is a forced inheritance, a mark of failure passed from father to son. He tries to act the part, to carry out his mission, but his hesitations make it clear he is not meant for murder. When Dumbledore finally confronts him calmly without a wand raised, Draco is exposed completely. Draco, you are not a killer." Dumbledore's voice is firm but kind. It is a line that cuts deeper than any spell. What the film forgets, and what the book understands, is that Draco is a child. A privileged child, yes, a cruel one at times, but still a child. His upbringing in a family that worships blood purity did not prepare him for death, and Voldemort knows this. That is why he gives the task to Draco, not because he expects success, but because he expects a slow, crushing failure. The film never articulates this cruelty. It offers us no moment to witness Draco's growing isolation, his spiraling panic, his sense of drowning under the expectations of a genocidal regime. The moment Draco attacks Katie Bell is not a moment of dominance, but desperation. He uses a cursed necklace, one he hopes will reach Dumbledore indirectly. But the attack goes wrong. Katie, innocent and uninvolved, nearly dies. She rose into the air, her limbs outstretched, her eyes closed, her hair streaming behind her, as though she were in the throes of some terrible agony. This is not the act of someone in control. It is the flailing of someone running out of time and options, and Draco knows it. When the news reaches him, he does not gloat. He becomes quieter, more withdrawn. The price of his mission is now real. Similarly, the poisoned mead meant for Dumbledore ends up nearly killing Ron Weasley. Another misfire, another casualty, another reminder that Draco is not a mastermind, but a terrified boy trying to fulfill a task he does not understand. Malfoy knows what he's doing, Harry insists, but even Harry, obsessed with Draco's guilt, misses the deeper tragedy. Draco doesn't know. He's guessing, he's improvising, he's stumbling toward murder and getting blood on his hands anyway. In the book, Dumbledore never tries to overpower Draco. He offers him a way out. "You are not alone," he says. And this is perhaps the most critical moment for Draco. For the first time, an adult from the other side does not see him as a pawn, a threat, or a legacy of hatred. Dumbledore sees a boy in pain. He offers Draco protection. He tells him his family can be safe. The weight of that offer is enormous, and Draco, shaken, lowers his wand. But this crucial turning point is barely felt in the film. There is no tremble in the voice, no hesitance that lingers, just a brief standoff and an abrupt ending. Snape, who ultimately kills Dumbledore, makes an unbreakable vow to protect Draco. This too reveals the truth. Even Voldemort's inner circle doesn't believe Draco can survive the task. They do not expect success, they expect collapse. And yet, in the film, none of this tension breathes. We are not shown the quiet conversations, the urgent whispers between Narcissa and Snape, the palpable anxiety that haunts the Malfoy family. We are only given shadows and expected to fill in the grief ourselves. Draco's bathroom breakdown is one of the rawest moments in the series. When Harry finds him there, and they duel, it ends with Draco bleeding, his chest slashed open by a curse Harry barely understands. Blood spurted from Malfoy's face and chest as though he had been slashed with an invisible sword. Draco collapses, not with bravado, but with a child's cry of pain. He does not fight back, he does not threaten, he is broken. And even then his first words are not of revenge, but fear. Snape's arrival saves Draco, but not just physically. It reasserts the line between predator and prey. Draco, for all his arrogance, has never been a predator. In this 6th year, he is prey. Caught in the crossfire between Voldemort's vengeance and Dumbledore's mercy, between Lucius's failure and Narcissa's fear. His arc is about survival, not victory. The book knows this, the film does not. One of the most overlooked scenes in the book is when Draco is spotted sobbing in the girls' bathroom by moaning Myrtle. She does not mock him. She speaks of his pain as something deep and unspoken. He's not been going to lessons and he's been crying in there, poor boy. That image, a bully crying alone, comforted only by a ghost, deserves more than a passing glance. It is the unraveling of everything Draco believed he was. And yet the film never gives him that collapse. It rushes through the beats of his assignment, never allowing us to linger on the slow-motion tragedy of a soul breaking under pressure. The film's Draco is mysterious, sure, but not layered. There is no heartbeat behind his glares, no terror in his silence. Tom Felton, when given the chance, shows glimpses of it. But the script never lets him speak the language of vulnerability. This is why when Draco lowers his wand in front of Dumbledore, it should be the climax of his entire arc. In the book, his hand trembles, his voice wavers, he is surrounded by Death Eaters, but he hesitates. That hesitation is everything. It is what separates him from the others. But in the film it feels like a footnote, just another step towards Snape's dramatic entrance. The emotional complexity of Draco's choice is not explored, only observed from a distance. And so, the tragedy of Draco Malfoy becomes not only his own, but also the audience's. We are denied the full weight of his transformation. We are denied the tears, the panic, the insomnia, the failures. We are given a shadow of a character when the source material offered a storm. Rowling does not ask us to forgive Draco, but to understand him. To see how the same war that made Harry a hero tried to make Draco a killer. By the end of the book, Draco does not walk away victorious. He does not stand proudly with Voldemort. He escapes, trembling, barely able to process what has happened. Draco was on the uppermost landing, struggling with the door, terrified to the point of madness. There is no triumph in him. Only survival, only fear. And perhaps, in that fear, a flicker of redemption. This was a boy who once mocked Harry for being an orphan, who called Hermione a mudblood, who strutted through Hogwarts like a prince. But now he is a servant of a master who would kill him as easily as praise him. He has no control, no power, and in that collapse he becomes human. The film, however, is not brave enough to show that humanity. There is no question that the sixth book is a turning point for many characters, but for Draco Malfoy it is the first time he truly steps out of his father's shadow, not into greatness but into vulnerability, into fear, into a place where the reader can finally see the boy behind the name, the boy who was told he had no choice, the boy who, at the last moment, didn't pull the trigger, and that is why his inner conflict matters, not just as character development, but as a mirror to the war itself. Not everyone fights with bravery. Some are broken by the pressure, some run, some cry in bathrooms, and some, like Draco Malfoy, remind us that in a war of good and evil there are still children caught in between.